This story, which is inspired in part by real events, links together two stories that take place at different times in history and satirizes the excessive influence wielded by some of the experts on the pinnacle of the pyramid of the so-called art institution. In this scenario, art becomes the obsessive exchange value, while the different media only deal with what is introduced as new, controversial, or scandalous. The Fairtrolla Collection Board of Directors meets because of an article questioning the authenticity of Caravaggio's Sleeping Cupid, the most emblematic piece in his collection. The president confesses to having sown the seeds of doubt himself in order to save the museum from going into the red. He tells the story of how his father, Douglas Fairtrolla Sr., acquired the painting at Sotheby's in December 2008.
Our story starts in an Alitalia airplane in which Dr. Carmelo Baracchini, a specialist in ancient Italian art, and Giovanni Cacopado, a wealthy Milan trader and collector, are flying to Malta International Airport. The reason for their journey is a tip from Joseph Collecca, an art trader in Valletta, about the appearance of a painting on the island of a sleeping Cupid, with great possibilities of being a Caravaggio. Collecca was waiting for the men patiently in his premises at number 32, Merchant Street. Baracchini introduced everybody. "I haven't managed to bring the painting here," Collecca apologized. "The painting is in Medina, so we have an interview at 2 o'clock with its owner, Mr. Leslie Staffini. After lunch, we'll go there and examine it." Whilst enjoying a dish of renowned Maltese rabbit cooked with pepper, onion and courgette, Staffini told his audience all the details about how the painting had come into his hands. In 1974, when his grandfather Keith died, he had to share the inheritance with his cousin John Lopez, Staffini told them. In the Santa Ursula buildings, one of the old warehouses that belonged to his grandfather, they found the storeroom that had belonged to the painter and set designer Peter Coucher. There, they found a painting rolled up which represented an ugly child lying down on a dark background, which later they were to discover was extraordinarily similar to the one that is conserved in the Palazzo Pitti in Florence. The painting was there with others, most of which were not signed, and had belonged to Coucher, along with everything else that was found in the storeroom. When they had finished their desserts, Collecca paid the bill and drove the other three in his car to Medina. After going through the main gate to the city, flanked by 2 stone lions, they reached the Archbishop's Square. Collecca parked, and crossing over in front of the Cathedral Museum, they went up Villagon Street, a long avenue full of palaces whose excessive restoration had taken away their soul, until they reached the house in which Staffini resided. Once inside, they walked through the hall and, turning to the right, went up 2 flights of the wide staircase to the main floor where, going through several rooms, they reached a smaller office. When Staffini opened the door of a built-in cupboard on the wall with a key, they saw the painting. It was a ghoulish, powerful work of art, with an extraordinary elegance. Carmelo Baracchini took his time. He got out his magnifying glass and, whilst the others looked on in religious silence, he examined the area which contained the signature. Finally, he measured the canvas and stated 78 by 110. A few centimetres difference from the one in Florence, he said. It's possible that he was not satisfied with the first painting and wanted to try again. That's why there would be two original versions. It all fits in. Giovanni, Sotheby's will accept this as an original, without a doubt. On their return to Valletta, Barocini accepted the percentage. Cacopado could buy the painting and he would certify it. The collector immediately rang Colleja to close the deal, and they agreed on the way in which the transaction would be carried out. Down payment would be withdrawn from the Bank of Malta, and the rest, to make up €500,000, would be transferred to Switzerland. With the pay slips of the operation, they could collect the painting the following day at noon and start their return journey to Milan. While Cacopado took care of the banking operations, Barocini walked to the library building. There he showed his researcher card to the employee controlling the entrance hall and went up the long staircase to the main floor in which the National Library was found. He went up to a uniformed porter who greeted him on recognizing him. He asked for the Index of the Archives of the Order, a book in which, typed in faded blue ink, everything listed in the documents of the Criminal Committee were recorded. He went directly to the chapter that dealt with September 1608. He did not ask to see the documents corresponding to this period, because the one he was thinking on, he already knew it wasn't there. With a self-complacent smile, he gave the index back to the porter and took his leave, saying, "See you next time." He found incredible that in all these years nobody had been aware of the absence of the document, and that nobody had placed any importance on this. But it was very important, at least to him, as he was about to solve all his problems. The following day they started the climb which, going around the city wall, would take them to the city gate, where they would get a taxi to the airport. Cacopado stopped to indicate the procedure that they would observe on arriving. However, Barocini, staring at his companion, commented sharply, "If you want to pass the painting to someone, dear Giovanni, you can start thinking about other proof that you won't get for only €50,000. The price of my reputation is somewhat higher." Cacopado's face was a picture. His eyes became an incandescent volcano of surprise and rage. He did not dare look his associate in the face, and he could hardly contain the impulse to push him off the top of the wall. However, he waited until the other man finished. Barocini continued, without seemingly taking a breath, "The evidence that will allow me to certify the painting we have bought is an original document from the archives of the Order, which someone removed from the National Library, and which the historian Schermerhorn published in his book Malta of the Knights in 1929. When you say we have bought and ours, what are you referring to exactly?" Cacopado asked, fearing the worst. Barocini replied, "I bought the papers from Schermerhorn's granddaughter." However, Cacopado now had to fit in with his demands if he did not want to lose his investment. Whilst the aeroplane climbed over the clear sky of the Mediterranean, nothing seemed likely to break the silence between the two of them. Sitting next to each other in the cabin of the aircraft that was taking them back to Milan, they hardly spoke to each other throughout the flight, while Malta faded into the distance.
Douglas Fairtrolla Jr. continued his report to the members of the board. The painting was auctioned at Sotheby's in London in December 2008, where my father acquired it for 15 million euros. The price included the Schermerhorn papers and an array of certificates. After the scandal I promoted with the story about how the painting was purchased, everyone will now pay to see it and to voice their opinion on its authenticity, and also to find out details about how the young Moorish slave trafficking worked on the island, and how some mothers sacrificed the honor of their daughters to the Knights of the Order in exchange for protection. Carmelo Baracchini, Professor Emeritus of the University of Florence, agreed to collaborate on the script for the TV series. An extraordinary script. Cynthia Simons spoke. It's known that Caravaggio was arrested for a fight, the reasons for which are unknown. He was expelled from the order for having left the island without permission, not for the crime for which he was imprisoned, of which no document makes any mention. And the only crime which could not be talked about was common sodomy. Roworth Panofsky objected. Homosexuality was common in those days. You only have to look at Caravaggio's own paintings to deduce that society wasn't puritanical. Cynthia Simons explained, in the world of art it was tolerated, but in the eyes of the law it was a terrible anathema, especially if a person of a certain status was involved. Everything seems to indicate that only a mixture of sexual jealousy and compromised dignity could explain the decision to remove Caravaggio from Malta, only to then harass him to the ends of the earth and to his death. Who instigated this vendetta? Asked Panofsky. Who could have felt humiliated when an up-and-coming craftsman tried to seduce, or actually seduced, one of his page boys? Suggested Simons. Don't tell me it was Wignancourt, the Grand Master of the Order, exclaimed Panofsky. Dr. Simons continued. Baracchini had always maintained that those who attacked and injured him on the docks of Naples in October of the previous year were assassins sent from Malta. On that occasion, Caravaggio was able to defend himself, but the next time they didn't underestimate him. The new plan was brilliant. Intercept the painter on his return journey to Rome, and it worked perfectly. It's impossible to separate his return from the final ambush that ended his life on a deserted beach, surrounded by murderers. Starting from this premise, our team of scriptwriters has created the storyboard for the series together with Baracchini, concluded Simons. The patrons shifted happily in their seats, and the agitation reached a climax when Francis Bajada exclaimed, "Dear Mr. Fairtrolla, your father made a fortune, and now his son is returning that benefit to this country in the form of cultural assets." "God bless America," chanted all those present in unison.